Good morning and welcome to another edition of Blain's Morning Porridge. It's 27th of October 2025. This morning, end of the world or another Trump deal? As always, like to start with a quote. So this morning, so it's a beep coin toss. That is what we get for $50 billion. We'll talk about the film in a moment. Is it possible to cram Cataclysm, Armageddon and Apocalypse all into a single morning porridge at the start of a week that promises to be relatively market friendly? Well, of course it is, and there's plenty of stuff to worry about. But when the noise this morning sounds positive, then the herd that is the market will keep on fooling itself. The higher it climbs, the further there is for it to fall. In a world teetering between optimism and catastrophe, geopolitical deals, nuclear fears, financial markets, political chaos, and irritating technology, sometimes it's very difficult to know where to go. Markets keep rising despite the growing instability and uncertainty, and that's because investors want to believe good news. And this week, the market will find much to be positive about. Now, one of the key events this week is going to be the President Trump Emperor Xi summit. A trade deal between the USA and China is expected at the Seoul summit, which is being hailed as peace in our time. It's going to be mostly theatre, and China will quietly win by getting concessions, while Trump will see it as a historic victory, which he will present as the biggest deal, the greatest deal, the bigly greatest deal in world history. In reality, the US farmers may finally sell their mountains of soya beans, but it's going to be the USA stepping back while the China steps forward. And the second positive thing was Argentina, a shock election win for President Javier Milei. He was expected to get beaten, but in fact he's won with 41% of the vote, despite corruption around him and widespread poverty in Argentina. Now, markets and the IMF will be breathing a sigh of relief, but it's quite clear that much of the reason that Argentinian voters have voted for Milei is because Donald Trump made it very clear that the $40 billion that America is bailing their economy out with comes with strings attached, and that is that they voted for Milei. On the downside, though, I seriously advise you, if you're of a nervous disposition, do not watch the new Netflix film House of Dynamite. It's one of the most depressing but realistic films that I've watched, and yeah, I'm afraid you probably do need to watch it. I reckon it was inspired by a book called Nuclear War, a scenario that was published last year, and that book highlighted just how quickly we could tumble into nuclear Armageddon in the event of a rogue missile strike. And that's basically what the film House of Dynamite looks like. And what's so unsettling about it is that the narrative is unstoppable. And it does some very clever things to reinforce that. It should remind us about complacency about nuclear war. The fourth thing, and this is almost the comedy part of the story this morning, is the US economy and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. There was a big FT interview published with him over the weekend, and it shows him as the voice calming markets, the Trump whisperer. While Trump undermines the economic credibility of the USA, it's up to Bessent to go out and persuade everyone that there really aren't the kinds of problems that everyone thinks may occur. Now, I do believe there is great resilience in the US economy, but anything positive you say about no sign of inflation or a strong economy or earnings increasing or strong consumption comes with an implied yet. When you have the kind of corruption that we're now seeing in the US with Trump and his friends and family, engaged in all the crypto schemes and other things that are going on, like free aircraft from Qatar, and then you end up with the US economy not improving, what are going to electors think in 2028 as it increasingly looks clear that Trump intends to stand? And finally this morning I end the morning's porridge with some of my big frustrations. And the first thing here is electric car chargers in the UK. Now, a couple of months ago, my wife and I decided we were going to get a plug-in electric hybrid. And to do so, we ordered a charger. And 2 months later, it's still not arrived. And we've just been told that it probably won't because of the high number of calls that the fitters are receiving to fit them. Now, the problem there is that we have spoken to our power supplier, we have spoken to contractors, and they all have to wait for permission from Scottish Electric, who supplies the power to Hampshire. And they're the ones who are sitting on this application, but they're the ones who are charging us a full rate instead of the discounted rate that we'd get. That sounds a bit off to me. And my final rant this morning is about Microsoft Copilot. Now, I have noticed that it's completely embedded now in Microsoft Word, and that means every time I use it to write the morning porridge, it offers to help and to summarize and to review it for me. But the last thing I possibly want is for Microsoft Copilot to be sharing all my thoughts with the rest of the Microsoft Office, wherever they are looking at it. Anyway, enough ranting about how terrible the modern world is. You can find the Morning Porridge every day on morningporridge.com, or you can listen to it on a full podcast where I'll go through the whole thing rather than just this short little interlude. Anyway, thank you very much for your attention. We'll be back tomorrow with something else. Cheers.